and it's recovered most of yesterday's drop. Strong demand stepping in. RSI is down at 25, oversold. The selling's getting stretched. Selling's stretched into support, and the lean is long. The agent's watching for a bullish reaction to set up a long towards 77,411. A reversal long setup is forming here. What's the lineup? Price right at the high liquidity support zone in 76,712. RSI is oversold at 27. The move is exhausted. Volume confirms rejection. A big volume spike. Real participated behind move, not noise. The agent wants a bearish/bullish rejection candle at the zone to confirm before it commits, not chasing. The long setup still developing. What it needs, a bearish/bullish rejection candle at the zone to confirm. Until then, no entry. Here's the map from here. If price reclaims 77,411, the agent looks long towards 77,876, and if it loses 76,712, the buys flips short towards 75,674. The agent's intraday lean is long, so it favors the upside scenario. Still tracking that reversal long, not triggered yet. The agent's waiting for RSI reaching an overbought/oversold extreme. Still tracking that reversal long, not triggered yet. The agent's waiting for a bearish/bullish rejection candle at the zone to confirm. Mapping the structure, resistance sits just above at 76,712, about 0.0% away, and support is below at 75,674, roughly 1.3% down. The agent's watching which one price tests first. A large sell just printed, $0.82M sold at 76,694. Worth noting who's active here. Still waiting for something to develop. Sellers are active on flow, though price is holding up. Bitcoin's around 76,702. Patience here. The reversal long isn't confirmed. Watching for a bearish/bullish rejection candle at the zone to confirm. Price is boxed in for now. Resistance sits just above at 77,411, about 0.9% away, and support is below at 76,712, roughly 0.0% down. The agent's watching which one price tests first. A large sell just printed, $0.86M sold at 76,746. Worth noting who's active here. It's quiet for now. Sellers are active on flow, though price is holding up. Bitcoin's around 76,753. Patience here. The reversal long isn't confirmed. Watching for a bearish/bullish rejection candle at the zone to confirm. The long setup still developing. What it needs, a bearish/bullish rejection candle at the zone to confirm. Until then, no entry. Patience here. The reversal long isn't confirmed. Watching for a bearish/bullish rejection candle at the zone to confirm. Still tracking that reversal long, not triggered yet. The agent's waiting for a bearish/bullish rejection candle at the zone to confirm. A large sell just printed, $1.01M sold at 76,600. Worth noting who's active here. The agent is just watching here. Sellers are aggressive and price is following them lower. Bitcoin's around 76,512. A divergence worth noting. Aggressive buying is hitting, but price is still falling. When buyers can't lift price, sellers usually have the upper hand. Bitcoin's around 76,487. Here's the plan. We're in a US session. Daily is rolling over. 4-hour is range. So the agent's plan is to stay flat. The 4-hour and 1-hour disagree. So a disciplined scalper waits for intraday momentum to pick a side rather than forcing a trade. No forcing trades in this. We wait for the time frames to line up. Price is sliding, even on a weekend, 1.0% off recent highs, and it's recovered most of yesterday's drop. Strong demand stepping in. RSI is down at 21, oversold. The selling's getting stretched. The time frames aren't aligned, so the agent's flat here. No trade until intraday momentum picks a clean side. Price is sliding, even on a weekend, 0.9% off recent highs, and it's recovered most of yesterday's drop. Strong demand stepping in. RSI is down at 24, oversold. The selling's getting stretched. The time frames aren't aligned, so the agent's flat here. No trade until intraday momentum picks a clean side. Price is sliding, even on a weekend, 1.1% off recent highs, and it's recovered most of yesterday's drop. Strong demand stepping in. RSI is down at 19, oversold. The selling's getting stretched. The time frames aren't aligned, so the agent's flat here. No trade until intraday momentum picks a clean side. Price is sliding, even on a weekend, 1.2% off recent highs. RSI is down at 18, oversold. The selling's getting stretched. The time frames aren't aligned, so the agent's flat here. No trade until intraday momentum picks a clean side. The agent is just watching here. Sellers are aggressive and price is following them lower. Bitcoin's around 76,363. Bitcoin's at 76,454 and RSI's screaming oversold at 18. That's extreme compression. Ticker flows solid at 1.155, so there's real conviction underneath, but I'm staying flat, waiting for structure to tell me where this goes next. I'm watching the RSI sit at 21 right now, which means the momentum meter is basically flashing red. That's oversold territory. What that tells me is sellers have been aggressive, but it also signals there's less room left to push down before buyers start sniffing opportunity. That's why traders watch it. I'm flat here, watching Bitcoin inch toward 76,712, just $232 above us. That's where volume clusters get heavy. If price finds it, we know whether sellers are actually done or just taking breath. I'm watching her sit right below that 7700 mark where the most volume got done historically. That's our magnet, and we're 260 away from it. RSI is at 18, which is deep oversold territory, so there's structural tension here between where buyers stepped in before and where we are now. I'm flat watching Bitcoin trade at 76,427. The fear and greed index is at 25, extreme fear territory, and RSI is deeply oversold at 16. That's the kind of setup where bounces can happen fast. But I'm not chasing anything into this US session. I'm watching Bitcoin hold at 76,431 with the RSI at 14, which is deep oversold territory. That tells me sellers are exhausted, but price hasn't found its floor yet. We're still 280 away from that 76,712 resistance above us. I'm seeing RSI at 19 right now, which is oversold territory. That's a momentum gauge that tells us how stretched sellers have pushed price in the short term. Traders watch it because extreme readings often mark turning points, not directions to trade into. I'm flat, and I'm watching this bounce setup pretty carefully. Bitcoin sitting at 76,484, and that nearest resistance sits just 228 points above us at 76,712. If we crack that level, we'd be testing into the volume node at 76,764 where real buyers have stepped in before. I'm watching Bitcoin sit at 76,502, and the volume node that's where most contracts traded is up at 76,764. There's real work to do if we're testing that level. I'm watching Bitcoin sit at 76,461 in extreme fear conditions, with RSI at 19 deeply oversold. The macro backdrop here is funding flat and open interest unchanged, so there's no fresh leverage pressure yet. That's patient money waiting. Bitcoin's trading at 76,452 right now. RSI is deeply oversold at 18, and the fear and greed index is reading extreme fear. That's the kind of setup where panic selling often exhausts itself. I'm watching the nearest resistance at 76,712, about 260 above. No position for me yet. I'm watching Bitcoin trade at 76,419, and that RSI reading of 16 is telling me something important. RSI, that's the relative strength index. It measures how fast price has moved down recently, 0 to 100 scale. When it hits 16, that's oversold territory, meaning sellers have pushed hard, but there's usually less room to go lower before buyers step in. That's why traders watch it. I'm watching Bitcoin at 76,439, and that oversold RSI of 18 is sitting like a coiled spring. The nearest resistance up is 76,712, only 273 points away. If we crack that, we're testing the volume node just above it. I'm watching Bitcoin sit at 76,458, oversold on the RSI at 19, which means selling pressure got extreme. The heaviest volume node above us is at 76,764. That's where a lot of trading actually happens. I'm flat here, respecting the structure. I'm watching Bitcoin down here at 76,431 in extreme fear mode, fear and greed at 25, but funding's flat and open interest isn't collapsing, so I'm reading this as capitulation theater, not conviction selling yet. I'm watching Bitcoin trade at 76,444, and the RSI is sitting deep in oversold territory at 18, which historically tends to catch attention from value hunters. Funding is basically flat, so there's no leverage desperation pushing price around right now. I'm flat on Bitcoin right now, watching the RSI at 16. That's the relative strength index, basically a meter showing whether an asset's been sold too hard too fast. When it hits these extreme lows, it tells me the selling pressure is exhausted itself, not that price has to bounce. Smart traders use that as context, not a signal. Bitcoin's sitting at 76,433 right now, and I'm watching that oversold RSI at 17 like a hawk. There's real buyers waiting just 278 points up at 76,712. That's where I'm hunting. I'm watching Bitcoin trade at 76,422 right now. That RSI at 16 is screaming oversold, but price is still sitting below where the heaviest volume actually traded, up around 76,764. Structure's not inviting me in yet. I'm watching Bitcoin sit at 76,410 in extreme fear, RSI deep in oversold territory at 16. Funding's flat, which tells me there's no real conviction yet, just waiting to see if this fear breaks into a real move or fades. Bitcoin's holding 76,370 right now, and that RSI at 16 tells me we're deep in oversold territory, the kind of setup that demands patience, not panic. I'm watching Bitcoin hover at 76,369, and here's what matters right now. RSI is down at 15, which means the selling pressure has been pretty extreme, but that's actually important, because oversold conditions like this often mark exhaustion, not a guarantee of a bounce. That's why traders watch it. I'm flat watching Bitcoin sit at 76,448. RSI is oversold at 18, that's steep, but I'm not chasing. The nearest resistance is 264 points up at 76,712. If we get there, that's where real conviction shows. I'm not touching this. Bitcoin's at 76,445. RSI is deep oversold at 18, but the heaviest volume node sits up at 76,764. That's real resistance, not fiction. Price hasn't reached it yet. I'm watching Bitcoin trade at 76,444 in extreme fear. The RSI is deep oversold at 18, but funding's flat and neutral, so I'm sitting on my hands until the macro picture clarifies. Bitcoin's pinned at 76,470 right now. RSI is deeply oversold at 19, which means price has moved down hard and fast. Funding's dead flat, so leverage traders aren't leaning either direction yet. I'm flat and patient here. I'm watching RSI sit at 20, which means Bitcoin's technically oversold. That's when the momentum meter swings so far down that historically, reversals often follow. Traders use it as a contrarian signal. Extreme readings don't predict direction, but they flag exhaustion. Bitcoin's sitting at 76,445 right now, and that oversold RSI of 18 has my attention. There's a 267-point gap up to 76,712. That's where I'm eyeing the next real test. I'm flat and patient here. Bitcoin's sitting just below 76,450, RSI's deep in oversold territory at 18, and the heaviest volume node, where the most trading actually happened, is up around 76,764. That's structural resistance I'm watching. I'm watching Bitcoin trade in extreme fear with RSI deeply oversold at 18. That's textbook capitulation territory, but funding rates stay flat, so there's no leverage panic yet to confirm a real flush. I'm watching price hold steady at 76,447 while RSI sits deep in oversold territory at 18. That's the kind of floor where momentum often stalls before it can breathe again. I'm watching RSI hit 16 here. That's the relative strength index, basically a meter that tells us when an asset's been sold so hard it might be ready to bounce. Traders care because extreme oversold often precedes relief rallies, but patience beats timing. I'm watching Bitcoin sit at 76,435, and that oversold RSI of 17 is telling me we're stretched pretty far down. The nearest real resistance sits just $277 above us at 76,712. That's the immediate hunt. A reversal long setup is forming here. What's lined up? Price is right at a high liquidity support zone near 76,144. RSI is oversold at 17. The move is exhausted. The agent wants a bearish/bullish rejection candle at the zone to confirm before it commits, not chasing. I'm watching Bitcoin sit at 76,404, and that oversold RSI of 17 is telling me sellers have punched hard. The heaviest volume node sits up near 76,745. That's where real trading happens, so I'm not chasing down here without structure. I'm flat right now, watching Bitcoin sit in extreme fear with RSI down in oversold territory at 17. That's relative strength index, a momentum meter, while funding rates stay neutral and open interests going nowhere. Macro backdrop says the market's exhausted but not ready to commit either direction yet. Bitcoin's sitting at 76,485 with RSI at 20. That's oversold territory. Taker flow is mild at 0.7, funding's neutral, and we're about 230 away from the nearest resistance at 76,712. Fear and greed is at 25, extreme fear. I'm flat, watching for setup, not chasing. I'm flat, watching Bitcoin trade at 76,454. Let me break down RSI for you. It's a momentum gauge that reads 0 to 100, and when it hits 19 like it is now, that's oversold territory, meaning selling pressure has exhausted itself temporarily. Traders watch it because it signals potential snapback moves, not direction. I'm watching Bitcoin trade at 76,485, and there's a cluster of resistance just 227 points higher around 76,712. That zone sits right where volume is heaviest. If we reach it, we'll see how serious this bounce attempt really is. Price is sitting at 76,495, down in extreme fear territory with RSI at 23, which is deeply oversold. That heaviest volume node up at 76,745 is acting like a magnet right now. I'm watching Bitcoin at 76,465 in extreme fear with RSI deep in oversold territory. Funding is flat and quiet, so the big money isn't rushing in yet despite the panic around us. I'm watching Bitcoin hold just above 76,420 in extreme fear. RSI is deep oversold at 18, which tells me sellers have exhausted themselves, but price hasn't found conviction to bounce yet. Taker flow is mild, so I am not seeing aggressive accumulation either. I'm staying flat. This is an A-grade reversal long setup. The agent is taking it. Full confluence. Price is right. A high liquidity support zone near 76,144. RSI is oversold at 17. The move is exhausted. A rejection candle is printing at the zone. Price is being pushed back. Taker flow turning to buy. It's long from 76,415. Stop below 75,687. Target 77,724. A 1.821 trade. Managing it live now. I'm sitting tight on this long. RSI is absolutely crushed at 17, oversold territory, and taker flow is light at 1.89, which tells me the selling's losing steam here near my entry. I'm holding through this momentum dip. RSI are hammered at 19, meaning oversold conditions could flip fast, and I've got room to my stop at 75,87, so I am letting this setup breathe. I'm staying in this long. Price barely budged to 76,465, but RSI's screaming oversold at 20. That's classic capitulation setup where shorts panic cover. Momentum's down, takers heavy, but I'm not sweating it yet. I'm holding tight here. RSI's deep in oversold territory at 20, which usually invites buyers back in. Taker ratio is still positive at 1.89, so I've got some conviction to lean on while momentum resets. Price just cracked above my entry, momentum's rolling down, but that oversold RSI reading at 20 is a classic reversal setup. I'm holding tight, watching for the bounce. I'm holding the long from 76,415, up a few pips. RSI's crushed down at 20, which often marks capitulation. so I'm watching for a bounce into my target at 77.7. I'm still in this long from 76.415 momentum's rolling down, but RSI's hammered at 19, oversold, so I'm watching for a bounce into my target around 77.7. I'm sitting with this long, up just a hair at 76.459. RSI is at 20, deeply oversold, so I'm watching for that momentum to catch a bid. Takers still aggressive at 13.71. I'm holding the long from 76.415, barely nudged green right now. RSI is hammered at 20, oversold territory, so I'm watching for any bounce into resistance before my target at 77.724. I'm staying in this long from 76.415. RSI is deep in oversold territory at 15, so I'm watching for a bounce into my target at 77.724 before momentum shifts back up. I'm flat on the long from 76.415 right now, but RSI is deeply oversold at 15. That's usually where buyers step in. Momentum's weak, so I'm watching for a reversal here before we push toward the target. Price is basically pinned to my entry at 76.413. RSI is crushed down at 15, which is textbook oversold. Momentum's been selling, but that extreme reading often sets up a bounce. Staying patient here. I'm holding the long from 76,415. Price is sitting right at entry. RSI is deep in oversold territory at 15. That's fuel for a bounce if momentum turns, and funding's still positive, so I'm patient here. I'm still in this long from 76,415. RSI is deep oversold at 15. Momentum's rolling downward, but taker bids holding firm. That's a sign buyers aren't abandoning. Watching for a bounce into my target at 77,724. I'm holding the long from 76,415. RSI is deeply oversold at 15. Momentum's rolling down, but taker demand is firm, sitting 40 points above my stop. Watching for a reversal into the target zone. I'm sitting with a long from 76,415. RSI is crushed down at 15, deeply oversold, and momentum's rolling downward. But that taker flow at 1.2972 suggests conviction below. Watching for a bounce or breakdown past my stop at 75,687. I'm keeping this long from 76,415 alive. Momentum's down, but RSI's flashed oversold, which often precedes reversals. Price barely budged since entry, so I'm patient for the setup to work. The long is slightly offside. Price under 76,415 by about 0.0%. Still well above the 75,687 stop, so the agent holds. No panic. I'm nursing this long from 76,415. Price basically flat right now. RSI is crushed down at 15. That's deep oversold. Momentum's actually rolling lower, but that often precedes a bounce, so I'm patient here. Long from 76,415, sitting right at entry. Momentum's rolling down, but RSI's pinned at 15 deep oversold, so I'm watching for a potential bounce into my target at 77,724. I'm locked in from 76,415, price barely budged, but RSI's crushed down to 15. That's deep oversold territory, so I'm watching for a bounce into my target at 77,724. Price barely budged since entry at 76,415, but RSI's crushed down to 15. That's deep oversold territory. Momentum's fading, so I'm holding tight, waiting for a potential reversal bounce toward my target. I'm parked at entry, 76,438. RSI's down at 15, so we're deeply oversold here, which actually sets up my upside to that 77.7 target if momentum flips. Still flat on this long, but RSI's crushed at 15, so we're deep oversold. Taker printing low. Funding's positive, momentum's weak though. Waiting for a bounce into that target. I'm sat right at entry 76,428. RSI is deep oversold at 15. Momentum's rolling down, but that's classic capitulation setup. Takers heavy at 91, so I'm staying patient on this one. I'm holding this long from entry, waiting on RSI to bounce off those oversold levels. Momentum's down, but the setup's still intact with plenty of room to target. I'm essentially flat here just under entry, 76,404. RSI is sitting deep in oversold territory at 14, so I'm watching for that potential bounce to push toward my target at 77.7. I'm barely scratched at entry right now. Momentum's in freefall and RSI is deep oversold at 17, which historically creates snap reversals. Staying put, watching for that bounce to materialize. I'm holding tight here, barely off entry at 76,439. RSI is screaming oversold at 18, so I'm watching for that bounce to fuel the move toward my target at 77,724. I'm parked right at entry, 76,434, and RSI is hammered down to 18. That's deep oversold territory. Momentum's bleeding down, but taker flow's still positive, so I'm watching for a bounce into my target zone. I'm basically flatlined right at entry, 76,455, but RSI is crushed down to 18, which tells me the selling pressure's exhausted, so I'm staying patient for the bounce into my target zone. Price is locked basically at my entry, 76,428, and RSI is crushed down to 17. That's deep oversold territory, so I'm watching for a reversal bounce into my target zone around 77.7. Sitting tight on this long, price practically kissing my entry at 76,419. RSI is deep oversold at 17, momentum soft, so I'm letting the setup breathe before the next move. Price is flatlining just below entry at 76,402, but RSI is deep oversold at 16. That's textbook bounce setup. Momentum's downward, so I'm letting this compress before the snap. Right at entry still, 76,419. RSI is crushed down to 17. That's deep oversold territory, so I'm watching for any bounce attempt before the sellers completely exhaust themselves here. Price is hovering just below entry at 76,406. RSI is deeply oversold at 16. That's extreme selling pressure, but taker volume's light. So I'm watching for a flush or a reversal here before the next move up toward my target.